In Chapter 1121, we learned who the 12 most important characters will be in the battle for the One Piece. Leaders from practically every significant faction was represented. From the world of pirates, we saw the 4 emperors, along with a surprise appearance by Kuzan from the Blackbeard pirates. The revolutionaries with leader Dragon and the leader of the new generation, Sabo. The leaders of the Celestial Dragons, Imo, along with the leader of the Holy Knights, Figurl and Garling. And finally, the leaders of the world government's military, featuring Fleet Admiral Sakazuki and Kobe of Sword, who may not be the leader of Sword but is the most recognizable face of the group to us fans. But interestingly, there's one faction from the world government that is missing from this lineup, a faction that has been featured fairly heavily in the Egghead arc even, and that is CP0. It seems that as we approach the conclusion of the series, Cypher Pol will be phased out, and we may be seeing the beginning of this in the Egghead arc itself, with Stussy and Kaku having a very melodramatic moment as they and likely Lucci meet their end on a futuristic island. Whether this marks the end of CP0 or not, I thought this would be a great time to reflect on the group and explain why I personally have found them to be an incredibly confusing and frustrating existence within the series. Down to their introduction creating a plot hole, as we were explicitly told that Cypher Pol only had cells 1 through 8, with the 9th cell being hidden, and CP0 clearly having no problem revealing themselves to the public at Dressrosa and during the Reverie. Their introduction into the story was sloppy at best. Not to mention that they undermined CP9. You mean to tell me that the Straw Hats worked so hard raiding Enies Lobby, and they didn't even fight the strongest cell of Cypher Pol, even though every indication in the story made it seem as if they were the strongest cell by a large margin. I'd be willing to excuse all of this if Oda was going to use the group in an interesting way, find a way to differentiate CP0 from CP9 to justify their existence. Instead, what Oda did was essentially create a faction that served an incredibly redundant role. To explain why, we have to start with the mission statement of Cypher Pol Zero. CP0 works directly under the world nobles, obeying their every whim. If a world noble tries to enslave a mermaid princess, CP0 will make sure no one intrudes. If a former world noble who holds the world government hostage with top secret information needs help with a disinformation campaign, CP0 will facilitate it. And if the world nobles need a group of scholars who are researching the Poneglyphs Annihilated, CP0 will lead the mission. But wait, that wasn't CP0, was it? CP9 was dispatched to carry out that mission on Ohara. So that begs the question, why would CP9 be taking orders that directly concern the world nobles, the 5 elders more specifically, instead of CP0? Well, if we ignore the fact that the world government is run by the Celestial Dragons, so theoretically any mission Cypher Pol engages in can be traced all the way up the government hierarchy, maybe we could say that it's because Spandine, the chief of CP9 at the time, was taking orders from Marine HQ, not the Celestial Dragons. CP0 would only undertake jobs that are coming directly from the nobles, something that is a more immediate concern to them, like Doflamingo's situation at Dressrosa, for instance. But then I could throw that back around and mention the fact that CP0 was literally negotiating weapons deals with Orochi at Wano, an act that certainly doesn't directly concern the world nobles, unless we're to believe that the locals at Marijoa are buying military weapons for the fun of it. I certainly didn't see any of the generic guards using advanced weaponry when the revolutionaries attacked. No matter how you try to cut it, the supposed chain of command between these two cells is incredibly inconsistent and borderline inconsequential. They seem to just fulfill the same purpose. Now let's talk about espionage. The reason CP9 is kept a secret is because their members need to be able to infiltrate enemy organizations to gain intel and even perform assassinations. It's a shady line of work that the world government would rather keep citizens ignorant of. The most notable example of this is of course at Water 7, when Rob Lucci led a team to work undercover at the shipbuilding company Galela in order to get close to Iceberg and obtain the blueprints to Pluton. If it's not about chain of command, then surely we can say the key differentiator is that only CP9 goes on covert op missions. Sure, that only serves to make CP9 cooler than CP0, but the key is that it does differentiate the groups. Except it really doesn't, as Stussy from CP0 literally was undercover at Whole Cake Island, operating as an underworld boss so she could gain intel on Big Mom. Well, fine, but at least CP9 does assassinations. No one else is tasked with straight up executing criminals. Except that's not true either, as Who's Who and Luffy were targets of CP0 during the Onigashima raid. And the entire Egghead incident began because CP0 was tasked with assassinating Vegapunk. I rest my case. Alright, so CP9 and CP0, they work for the same people and basically do the same jobs. Well, then what was the point of creating them? One answer: power scaling. Here's the thing. Oda rode himself into a corner after the Enies Lobby arc. He had the Straw Hats, who were known as Rookie Pirates, successfully invade one of the world government's strongholds and defeat CP9, who again at the time we believed were the strongest cell of Cypherpole. After this, we were shown just how unprepared the crew was for the dangers of the New World. The crew was no match for Admiral Kizaru at Sabaody and were separated. Then at Marineford, we saw just how powerful a Yonko is, as Whitebeard had the capability to destroy the entire island. And then Shanks and his crew were able to intimidate the Marines into ending the Paramount War. It was clear that Luffy had a lot of training to do in order to stand toe-to-toe with the strongest Marines and pirates. Oda had done a masterful job of establishing what the pinnacle of strength was in the series. But when it came to Cypherpole, we already reached the pinnacle, and we did it when Luffy was still weak relative to the top-tier fighters. If Oda was going to reintroduce the group and make them a believable threat, he'd have to give them an overhaul, and that's where CP0 comes in. The new, shiny cell of Cypherpole that is just like the previous one, but stronger and with allegedly more political power. Sure, it's effective as it helps scale the group to the standards of the New World, but it is a retcon that undermines the world building established prior. It would be like if after making it clear what the hierarchy of the Marines looks like, with there being a fleet admiral as the leader, with 3 admirals below, we just randomly say that actually there are 3 super admirals, who are even stronger than the 3 regular admirals, and we just never mention them. It would technically serve to increase stakes, but it's such a clumsy method of escalating drama that it's not even worth it. But here's the real kicker. Let's take a look at the actual members of CP0. Well, we have Guernica, the man whose only substantial role in the story was interfering in the fight with Luffy and Kaido, and then getting killed by Kaido. He was also flanked by several random masked members who have had little to no dialogue or screen time in the entire series, and Lucci, Kaku, Califa, Bluno, Kumadori. It's just CP9, isn't it? Literally every member of CP9, including Spandam, have been promoted to CP0. The only other member I haven't mentioned is Stussy, who literally betrayed the group at Egghead Island. So, to recap, Oda had the Straw Hats defeat Cypherpole's best too early, so his solution was to make up a new cell of Cypherpole in the New World to create a new threat to overcome. But not only is this new threat functionally no different than the old one, but a majority of the members of the new cell are just members of the previous one, and the new members are either completely irrelevant or end up betraying the group. Do you see the problem? The newest SBS revealed that after CP9's defeat at Enies Lobby, the group foiled a plot by Spandine and former level 6 inmates, which allowed them to be reinstated as members of CP0. While I could talk about how I wish this story was shown in the actual manga, that's a topic for another video. What matters is that Oda already crafted a story thoroughly explaining how Lucci and the gang managed to increase their strength during the time skip. That's all you need. There was no reason to arbitrarily throw away the established group from Water 7 to account for power scaling. Just say that CP9 has increased in strength after dealing with the chaos created in the aftermath of the prison break at Impel Down. Now, with all of that said, I think it would be fair to ask the question, why does it matter? Just pretend that CP0 is CP9 and there's no difference. The story doesn't change. And that's true, but I just can't pretend because that's not what the story is saying. The story of One Piece introduced CP0 because it was supposed to mean something. There was intent behind introducing this new group at Dressrosa, establishing that when they are active, world-shaking events are about to occur brings with it a level of expectation. Bizarrely, the group from inception, seemingly to its destruction, served a completely superfluous role. So with that, as we look forward to the 12 leaders in this impending battle over the One Piece, I say goodbye CP0, you just missed the cut.